begin? Awesome. Please have a seat. All right, so long story short, demonstration today, between today and Wednesday. Catch up if you need to. Send me an email if you're really lost. I haven't gotten any emails from anybody totally lost yet, so that's good. But on Wednesday, then we'll go over another round of Photoshop stuff. Feel free to play around, right, in Photoshop. You know, for instance, take something we're doing here and apply it to your studio project or something, right? This is what this is for. You know, studio is one of those really super important classes, 6 credit hours, 24 hours of your work every week, right? Outside of class, it's really important. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the key thing here, right? You don't really learn this stuff by just watching me do it, obviously. You do it by trying it and working things through and finding your own workflows, right? And that's easiest to do when you're actually applying it to something that actually matters to you, like your studio work. All right, so here I have Photoshop up. Let me just double check. Yeah, I've been recording. Again, I'm recording. All right, we just had a fire alarm for anybody that's watching this recording who wasn't in class. Shame on you, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. But all right, so we have Photoshop up. This is one of those PNG files that I exported out of Rhino, right? Maybe I rendered it. Maybe I just did the view capture. With the render, it looks like these are just soft shadows, so most likely it was just a render viewport mode capture. And this right now says layer 1. I can turn it off and I can just get nothing, right? Transparent nothingness, just a blank slate, quite literally. Sometimes, sorry, let me just itch my nose. If yours says background layer or something like that, and has a lock on it, you can't really turn it on or off. All you have to do is just double click it. Double click it and hit OK on the box that pops up. It won't look like that. It'll be a smaller box, and it'll say, "Are you sure you want to convert this to a regular layer?" You can say yes, right, or OK. All right. In fact, I can do that by simply flattening the image. Let's see. Okay, so some of you might have that. When I double click on it, it says, "Are you sure you want to make a new layer?" And I say, "OK, yes." All right. This is a PNG file. When I told it Rhino to make a transparent background, it preserved that transparent background. So you can see, hopefully you can see. Oh, actually, it doesn't look like it's transparent back there. Huh. Well, I'll be darned. So let me just do this. No, that really should have a transparent background. Yeah, let's see. All right. Well, one easy way to find out is to turn that layer off and let's make a new layer. So you'll see me referring back to some folders that I have on my laptop, just skies, textures, humans, things like that I downloaded off the interwebs. So the way I typically do these things is I find freebies, right? I just go to Google image search and say like high resolution sky background or something for HDR skies or something like that. And then I'll go to the tools and I'll tell it I only want large images or something like that. That's actually giving me quite a bit of horizon, like almost like an entire HDRI sort of background. I guess that makes sense. So if I go over here, let's double check this. Large, we'll live in large. Anyway, I can always go in and so this says HDRI skies. Let me just open that image up in a new tab and see how large it really is. That's decent. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save that. And so yeah, again, I'm usually just sort of going into the browser and downloading things. Let's see, where's the sky at? That one looks kind of silly, actually. I like this one. This one's nice. It's actually over an ocean. I don't really care about that, now do I? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Photoshop. And that's really the name of the game here. When I open certain JPEGs up, at least, it's going to open them up in Camera Raw for me. That's just a setting I have, because oftentimes I'm using the Camera Raw app. So you can disregard that, I think, in most cases. Here it is in Photoshop, right? I'm going to sit there and I'm going to, I'm going to select everything and I'm going to copy, right? So we do a lot of copying and pasting in Photoshop. Now you can select things with the rectangle marquee, the elliptical, you can do single rows, both vertical and horizontal. There are other sort of lasso selection tools, polygonal lasso tool, freehand, magnetic, etc., right? If I just want to select everything all at once, I can just go to the select pull down. You can see that it's just, in my case, Command A. Since I'm on the Mac, it's Control A if you're on the Windows side, right? So Command A, Command C, copy, right? And what's paste? Command or Control V, that's right. All right, so there's a sky. And it's now its own layer here in Photoshop, and I can position that however I want. I'm gonna make sure that this is, well, yeah, for some reason, oh, I know why. It's because I flattened the image. Oh, boo, that was terrible. That was so stupid. Josh, why'd you do that? Here, let me just open this up for realsies. There we go. Yeah, before I flatten that image, just to show you that lock on the layer. All right, now we go. All right, so paste the sky. There we go. You can see in the layers, it's just like layers of trace paper at your desk, right? You have something above another thing, layer sequence here reflects that. So if I want the sky to be underneath the architecture, I just do that, right? Okay, and I'm just gonna bump that sky up to cover the canvas. All right, yeah, so I have a transparent background. I thought that looked awfully weird, and indeed it was. So anyway, what else? Should we talk about adding some trees and some humans? Talk a little bit about eye-level perspective, right? So, I mean, again, when it comes to perspectives, we can glean a little bit here. What's interesting is it's really easy, it's a lot easier to tell perspective, right? Like where the vanishing points or vanishing points are, where the horizon line is, and where your eye line is. If you have a bunch of orthogonal geometry, and if that orthogonal geometry is orthogonal to count, right? So for instance, if I'm orthogonal to that wall, I get a 1-point perspective. Really simple, it's right there in the center. That line converges, that line converges, they all converge, those all converge right there, right behind your head actually. If I turn on the oblique, right, then I have a 2-point perspective. So these go off and converge on a vanishing point way over here, and these at a vanishing point way over there, right? Yeah. And if I'm looking up a skyscraper where it's like really distorted, right, like looking straight up, right, you get a third perspective, right? You get like a sort of Z vanishing point. It's a little more difficult here. So let's talk about that just for a minute. And let's go over this. What I find is important is that I set this up specifically in Rhino so that the camera should be at eye level on this first floor. And so I'm thinking it's probably, if I could draw a horizontal line and it sort of hits the exact same proportion here as here, as here, as here, as here, right? And I found eye level. If you don't have these rulers, let me back up for just one moment, right? Photoshop, right? In fact, all of the Adobe tools have a similar interface look, right? You have tools over on the left-hand side, you have boxes over here on the right-hand side, and then you have a set of tools up here on the top. If you don't see one of these that you need, you can go to the Windows pull down, you can toggle any of those on. So for instance, if you don't see your layers box or something over here on the right, you can toggle that on and drag it over there and dock it, same with properties, style, swatches, right, etc. And so if you go to the view pull down, you can see that I have the rulers on, right? So now I have rulers along the left-hand side and the top-hand side. I don't know if that's on default on your system. It is on mine. And if I click and drag from, let's say, the horizontal ruler up top, I can drag a guide, horizontal guide, and I can more or less figure out where eye level is, or at least, make a reasonable assumption right there. All right, so there's eye level. These are actually stupidly tall. You can actually sit on those, can you? Yeah. Darn, that was the whole point. Oh well. I should have been more careful. Right, so at eye level there, right, on the first floor, that's where eye level is, where my camera is, where my eyes are, right, that should be a plane. That looks like a line in perspective. Now up here, right, eye level line would actually conform to the perspective, and the higher or the further away from you it goes, right, and see the more distorted it is. All right, so if we decide to put people up here and things like that, then we need to figure out some other way. We would see if their head's poking out just a little bit, and then we would just sort of chop off the rest of their bodies, which sounds kind of weird when you take that out of context. Anyway, all right, so same thing. Let's think about trees, let's think about humans, right? Let's see, HDR sky seems kind of dumb. Let's say trees, transparent background, for Photoshop. We'll just throw in some keywords in there. Let's see what it pops up. Sometime today. All right. And then we can also say like, well, desert trees or Mojave desert trees, haha, right? So, we can actually find like, try to find things like Palo Verdes, mesquite, those sorts of trees that are actually more appropriate to plant here if we wanted to, right? So you can always look around for those. I tend to like try to keep those in one place, right? Like if I find some of these things, I think of them as a valued, treasured resource and keep them, right, and back them up on Google Drive, so that when the next time I have to do this, I don't have to like search around on the internet forever trying to find the right tree or the right person or something, right? If I have a library of these that I built up over time, it makes my life a lot easier, right? So I encourage you guys to do the same thing, trying to engender good habits here. And let's see, some of these will probably have a transparent background, and some of these, they might look like it does, but it doesn't, right? So let's check that out. Let's see, Desert Museum Palo Verde tree. That looks good. On free pick, at the risk of going somewhere where it's going to give me a bunch of pop-ups, I'm just going to go ahead and click with reckless abandon here. Use your Google account. So unlock this file, get unlock premium. You're already a premium member. Premium license, file type PSD and JPEG. Add to collection. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm just going to see if that's just an actual image there. Right, so that's an actual image. It is let me look at the end of that URL. A JPEG. Right, and so that checkerboard pattern, that's not something that would show up necessarily in your browser. It would just be sort of wide the default browser background. So that's something that we would actually need to Photoshop out. Use this image. Unless we wanted to pay for it, which I'm definitely not for that. So sorry, FreePic, if you're listening. I'm totally going to pirate your image. Yar. All right. And I'm just going to laugh about it. I'm not even going to be sad about it. Sometimes a website will even sort of like disable your right-clicking, so you can't like save it. Or have you guys ever encountered that on a website? Well, you can just get by that by let's see, going to developer or view, and you can say you basically just view the HTML, the CSS, and all the sort of page resources, right? So here I can play around and I can see, let's see, this has basically just this, right? I can open a new window. Or if that's happening, you can go to develop and you can say, where's web? Okay, here we go. We can do web inspector, and then you can actually start to select certain portions of the website, and it'll show you, parts of the web stuff in the behind the scenes, right, under the hood. There we go. Okay, so at any rate, let's just try and see if we can get this to work. I'm just going to save this image to downloads folder. We'll get to people here in a minute. Okay, what? All right, anyway. So now in the downloads folder, I'm gonna find this Palo Verde tree. I'm just gonna drag it into Photoshop. Yeah, sure, whatever. That Camera Raw app gets old after a while. You can see that we have several problems here. One, not only do we have a background in this thing that's kind of checkerboarded, but this is also like really small compared to the resolution of our rendering. So I don't recommend doing this, but just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to scale this up a bit and see if it still reads as a somewhat coherent image, not too pixelated. For whatever reason, it brought it into this actual, oh, it's because I actually had it open, okay. I just wanted to open it up in Photoshop, but yeah, we can deal with this. I'm going to go ahead and turn this stuff off, and we'll look at this right now. So you can see that there we have the image. Again, there's lots of different ways you can begin to try to select this stuff, like the background out, right? If it's like a blue sky, it's a little easier sometimes. But let's take a look at some of these selection options. If it's a fairly straightforward object, you can actually use the polygonal lasso tool and draw whatever that shape is around it. This course is much too complex in order to do that. There is a magnetic lasso tool which tries to sort of find the edges as you sort of quickly drag your cursor along it. Again, this is too complex. You would just spend so much time, it's silly trying to do that. There's a magic wand tool underneath, right? So let's see, I can go ahead and try to select all of the white. Let's see, does it have to be contiguous? No. I can try to select all the white pixels and all the gray pixels. And then delete them away. Smart object is not directly editable. Oh, okay, let me, oh, come on, really? All right. Yeah, sorry. Let me just open this up in downloads. All right, so let me just open this up in its own on its own here in Photoshop. Sorry, it dragged and dropped it into the rendering, converted it into a smart object, which is a whole can of worms I'm going to talk about right now. So anyway, let's take a look at some of these other options. Object selection tool, quick selection tool, magic wand tool. Let's try the object selection. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so it's gotten a lot better with machine learning, right? So for a long time, you actually go to adobe.bg for background, and you could actually like add your images, and then have it try to take the background out, and then tell how good a job it didn't do, and it learned from us, like for the last 10 years. Now we've actually sort of, that's a pretty decent job. Not complete job, but pretty good. So I have the tree selected, most of it anyway, and I'm going to say, instead of the tree selected, I'm going to invert that. I'm going to select everything but the tree, right? So I'm going to invert the selection and delete all that stuff away. Now, do I want a content-aware fill? No. I just want, why is it asking me that? Oh, come on. I just want a no color. Let's see. Preserve transparency, right? Blending, preserve transparency. Oh, I see. Maybe it's because this is set to background layer. All right, let me try that one more time. There we go. All right, so did it out of order, forgot the first step. All right, so I don't click that because there's a background. Now I can sort of stuff all that stuff. Now there still might be like white and gray haloing here, depending on how good of a job it did or didn't do. So let's see, I'm going to Command A, Command C, Command V, and yeah, you can see it's a little halo-y. It's going to have some white fuzziness around it. We can always do something else where we can select by color range and select anything that's super bright and then delete that away as well. Sometimes I do that, but first let's scale it up. All right, so the easiest way to scale is transform, right? So if you go to Control or Command T, that'll bring up the freeform transform tools. And you can immediately grab this handle and start to scale it or rotate it however you want. And indeed, you can see there definitely is some of that background. So this is what I'm going to do. I have this layer selected. I'm just going to go to Select, Color Range. And I'm just going to try to select a very bright part. Oops, I should have turned off the sky as well, I guess. Oh, come on. Select Color Range. There we are. Then you can tell it just how fuzzy or not you want this. I'm just going to start deleting more of this stuff away. There we go. All right. That's a little better. It's got less of a halo around it. All right. Haven't messed with color, haven't messed with saturation or anything else. I'm just trying to put some layers in, right? Should we do some people? Yeah, let's do some people. I have that eye level line, so let's get some people in this bad boy and start to activate it and make it look like a true piece of architecture where everybody's walking around and using it. You know, there are ways to get silhouettes and things like that. I'm just going to point you to one quick resource. I never forget this resource. If you just Google Arch Daily and scaled human figures or something, right? Scaled figures, then it gives you a page that has like, I don't know, 10, 12 different web pages for you to actually get free humans. So this one's called Escala Latina. There's Art Cutout, PNG, IMG, Skal Gubar, whatever the heck that's supposed to stand for, Non-Scandinavia, Cutout Life, yeah, Mr. Cutout. Now these names are getting lamer and lamer as we go. Cutout Mix. Here's folks in groups and sometimes looking up or not at eye level. Here's definitely not eye level, but from above, right? So you can, again, try to find something that matches your perspective. There's other sorts of entourage here, cars, things like that. Okay, so these two always seem to work out well for me. So let's do that guy, why not? Open image, new tab. I always want to double check that they're actually, oh, come on. That they actually have a transparent background. Yeah, just a normal looking couple. All right, so that'll work. Save downloads, save downloads. Skier, someone building a campfire. Maybe this is good for outdoor scenes. I don't know what that guy's doing, trimming the hedges or something? All right, that's lame. Let's go back to Non-Scandinavia actually does a pretty good job of curating these things. I have some more actually on my machine already. So, yeah, let's try this. I don't think they're going to be sitting down, so let me just find a couple of more folks here. There we go. And I'll open them up in Photoshop as well. So these already have transparent backgrounds. It looks almost like she was noticing someone was taking a photo of her without her permission or something. It's kind of creepy, but all right, like, oh. Command A, Command C, all right. And then back to this, Command V. We'll put her over here, eye level. Command A, Command C, Command V. And I'll turn these off as we go, just so that keep running the same ones. Command A, Command C, and Command V. All right. And I recommend putting more than 3 people in here, especially if it's supposed to be a bustling atrium full of people wandering around, right? So the more you actually add, the better. Again, I'm not really doing much with trying to correct for lighting or for color at this point. I'm just, again, layering these folks in. So let's put this guy up closer to us. I'm going to do Command T. and I had the wrong layer selected. Let's see. I think it's this one. There we are. Yeah. Command T. And I'm going to go ahead and scale him so he's actually much closer to us. Again, eye level is going to remain the same. We'll keep her there. We'll make this one recede off from the background just a little bit, as if she's coming from further away. All right. Again, once I'm done with that, I can always delete it or move it off. Those guides are something that when you actually publish the PSD or JPEG, look at it, it won't actually be there. It's just for your purposes of Photoshop. All right. Should we try to add some shadows? All right, great. So some of you have probably ray trace shadows of some sort, right? Hopefully, yes, hopefully you guys do. If you don't, that's fine. So one of the things I can do, there's several different ways of doing this. So I'm going to select my architecture layer, and I'm just going to make a new layer above it, right? But it's going to be behind the actual humans themselves. And let's see, so there's several different ways of doing this. So I'm going to show you several ways, right? If you are using something that isn't like perfectly white, you can actually use the dodge burn tool, and you can burn to darken certain portions with a feathered brush, right, a certain region. If that's not the case, like here, what you can actually do is make a gray brush that's feathered, and basically just simply draw some subtle shadows yourself. Or if you have some crisper shadows, right, that are fairly accurate. Let's say I have the shadows of this thing webbing across the floor, and I can basically take a copy of her, turn her down, tweak her, turn her into a shadow, right? So I'm going to do all three of those, and let's see what actually works here. So first strategy would be dodge burn, right? So dodge and burn are brush tools, and the dodge means you can sort of move things in the region you're painting, just lightens, right? Like it brightens up. And of course, burn tool is the exact opposite, darkens things up. It doesn't necessarily work on something with no texture and that's really bright anyway, so let's see if it actually does or doesn't. You can change the size of the brush here, maybe. And there's really not much to do here. Let's see. Soft round. Yeah, it's not really doing a whole lot in this sort of white clay model. Oh, that's because I actually have to select the right layer. So I'll select that white clay model. But it's still not doing anything here. If I come over here where there's actually some tone, you can see that it actually darkens and darkens and darkens as I start to add layers of that from that brush, right? But it's not working out here where things are already just, I mean, that floor is polished white. It'd be really hard to keep that floor clean. But anyway, I digress. So let's think about a different strategy. Let's go with, I'll just draw a black brush here. We can always turn down the opacity. So I made that new layer, and let's go ahead and use it here. I'm just going to, that seems a little like overkill, 476. Let's do a 70, yeah. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a smudge there, just like we have over here. And then I'll just change its opacity till it's much more subtle, right? Actually, it looks better on my screen than it does on the projection, so my apologies for that. And sometimes that works, right? Especially if you just want soft shadows, right? That dodge burn will help out a lot if you're using something with texture or tone. In this case, we just actually manually drew it in. Let's try the last one. There she is. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that layer, right-click, and say Duplicate Layer, and hit OK. I'm going to drag it so it's underneath that original layer. So I have layer 4, which is the human, layer 4 copy, which is again the human. But in this case, I'm going to do several things. One, I'm going to do a free transform, and I'll just rotate it out here, approximately kind of how it would be useful, right? And hit enter, it's rotated. Now I'm going to go to edit, pull down, and I'm going to go to transform. And here I can actually get some better, more nuanced tools here, including skew, distort, perspective. We'll use skew, distort, perspective today in several different ways and trying to match up perspectives and things like that and some angles. If I do with skew, I can begin to select each of these. And match them up, right? To sort of, again, make this a stretched shadow. Again, it's kind of weird seeing a human that way, but there we go. Okay, and after that, I can basically do two things, right? First of all, it looks like a reflection, a really poor one, but so I'm going to up the darkness on this person. So let's see. I can go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast, and I could just crank down the brightness. Or I can go to Image, Adjustments, Exposure. Right. Let's turn down the exposure all the way. There we go. All right. So that's a really dark shadow, and then all I need to do is simply tone down. Right, and then it looks like a shadow being cast on the actual floor, and you'll see reflections and textures and things like that in the meantime. Right? So it's all just about taking your time, being careful, keeping those layers labeled and organized. Right? So if I went by this angle, we actually wouldn't see this dude's shadow, but we would see her shadow. And in fact, her leg would actually, her foot wouldn't actually be on the, it's like this, wouldn't actually be touching the ground. And of course, we'd also need to do the same thing for this tree, right? This tree would be casting a shadow down, across, down, and then across the floor, and then maybe even up some walls, depending on how far the sunlight's penetrating. Let's see here. Should I do that one more time just to demonstrate it? Why not? Let's do her. Let's give her a shadow. Duplicate layer, right? I'm just selecting that layer, right-clicking on it, saying duplicate. I'm going to move it down below, hit transform, Command T, or copy, or Control T, depending on which operating system you're using. Just going to rotate her around here. And I can already see an issue. I'm going to need to mirror it as well, aren't I? So I'm going to undo that. Oops. And mirror that way. You see that menu popped up now? That's so nice. Now I can mirror that way. Now that will match up, and then this will have a gap in between. Yeah, that works out pretty well. Let me actually rotate this a little better here. Yeah, and right, so now it's a matter of going to edit. So I've been using some of these pull down tools, right? If you need to use all those transform tools, edit, pull down, transform. Yeah. And a lot of the other tools I use are in the image pull down menu, right? So if you go to image and adjustments, here are all the different ways you can start to tweak light, darkness, contrast, shading, tone, color, saturation, desaturation, etc. We can use those from time to time in a fairly destructive sense. In other words, you can't really go back without having to undo it while you're still in the same session. We'll talk more about, on Wednesday, making adjustment layers, so you can actually, it's like having the parametric version of Photoshop, right? You can always go back in and change, you know, how dark or how transparent something is with the slider, just like in Grasshopper. So anyway, let me just go to transform, oh wait, let's go to, sorry, I was just also trying to make sure that this thing's still recording. Okay, it is. Because when you have escape too many times, it stops recording. All right, so transform, skew, I think is what we used. Yeah, that looks about right. Right. Let's see. I'll do that maybe. Again, with this layer selected and this layer only selected, I'm just going to go to image pull down, adjustments, exposure. Just like with the camera, you can turn that exposure way down. I'm going to make this even lighter. She's further away from us. Or maybe I'll just make it match the other one. What was the other one? 15%? I'll make this match. 15%. Why not? Okay. All right. So, and again, it's just a matter of trying to make sure that it looks like you're floating in space somewhere, right? But actually, it's grounded. These shadows look pretty weird because nothing else is casting shadows like that, right? So that's one of the drawbacks of this. So anyway, let's see. I could do the same thing with the tree. So one of the good things about the tree is that it looks like this side is in shade. This side's getting a little bit of light, so that actually kind of matches the scene a little bit. It's so far away, I'm not really going to worry about it. Let's see. Let's try some materials, right? Let's talk about some overlay layers of materials. What would be kind of interesting is to maybe make the floor like a polished concrete or something with a texture. Should we try it? Yeah? And then maybe we could actually use the burn tool to make some maybe better shadows for these folks back here. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn those shadows off. And let's see here. Okay, so I have my architecture layer, layer 1 on. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer above it. I'm going to use that layer hopefully to copy and paste some concrete textures here. Before we start copy and pasting willy-nilly, let me turn off some of the things that we're not using anymore. For better or worse, I use that Palo Verde. And there's some gritty concrete looking stuff. There's some. I like that. These two might work well. This is kind of interesting. They come from the same source. Let's see. Let me open this up in Photoshop. These two things. Ah, yes, of course. Damn, really? Yes. Always just open. Come on. All right. Two different textures, right? So a couple of things I'm going to do. I'm going to try to stitch these together and make some much larger texture. That can then scale and can match up with the perspective inside. So if I just try to use this, things are going to look a little out of scale. You know what I mean? Like the aggregates and the textures might look larger than they really should. So I'm going to try to increase the size of this thing. That's why I'm picking 2 or 3 of them. I can sort of tile them together so they don't look too repetitive, and then clone stamp in between to sort of blur and merge them together. All right, so that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to say select all, copy, and then instead of saying paste, I'm going to say Command or Control N. Right? So it's telling me, okay, the active layer that I've copied is 600 wide, 800 high, with a resolution of 300 dpi. So I'm just going to say, instead of a width of 600, I'm going to say maybe 1800. And I'm going to paste, and I'll paste again. So I pasted 2 times. Maybe I'll sort of bookend this, and then I'll take the other texture and put it in the middle or somehow. Let's see. Copy and paste that in as well. I'm going to take all of these 3 layers, right? All of them are separate layers. They're like separate pieces of trace. When you want to merge all the pieces of trace into one layer or one piece of trace paper, you can select them and go up to layer and say merge layers. It'll merge all the ones that I have selected. I think you can actually right-click on them and say the same thing, but whatever. Now they're all one layer, right? And now, although I'm not sure why it, oh, I see. There we go. Right-click, there's duplicate, merge layers, there we are. All right. Let's try to get rid of these seams. shall we? Yeah, sound good? Have you guys played around with the clone stamp tool? Yeah? All right. So I'm showing you guys things that you already know. Is that correct? You guys kind of know some Photoshop pretty well? Okay, good. That's great. So this is review, and I expect like freaking awesome stuff, man. Clone stamp tool. All right, so it looks like one of those like stamp tools that a notary has when you need to get something notarized. So anyway, what it does is it's another brush tool. Let me make sure I have that layer selected. And I can hold down that option. I think it's Option on the MacBook Pro. I think it might be Alt on a PC. I change it to a crosshair, and I can sample the composition right there, and you can see that it'll start to blur things around accordingly here. I'm starting to book match some things, which is not what I really wanted here, but. And if I use it as a feathered brush, then I can sort of blend things in together. I'm starting to see some repetition there that I didn't want. There we are. Delete some of this over. All right. Trying to just get rid of some of those seams. Right? Again, it's just sort of hit and miss on where you actually sample, on how you actually drag and try to sort of get rid of certain seams here. I mean, I'm not so happy with this, but it is what it is. And I'd probably try to spread it out a little more. There's some of the error and repetition over time. But suffice to say, this will work for my purposes. I'm going to go ahead and select all. Command A, copy, Command C. Let's go in here and say Control V. All right. First things first, I'm going to rotate this. Holding down the Shift key, I can rotate it in intervals of 30 or 45 degrees. And keep it so that it's sort of now vertical. Did I want to do that? I probably didn't want to do that, now that I think about it. But I am going to, I am going to use the skew or the perspective tool. Let's look at each one and see what it does. I can't even remember what the perspective tool does. Perspective, let's see. Oh, I see. Yeah. So it's like skew, but without the freehanding. Gesundheit. I actually have to zoom out in order to get this to stretch the way I need it to. Okay. And now you can see that first things first, I'm going to have to sort of start to clip things out, right? This is like really drastic sort of wallpapering of the floor plane. So now I'm going to have to sort of do some trimming here, right? So first things first, if I keep all these layers well organized, I can turn certain ones off that I just don't need for right now. Then with this layer selected, I can turn down its transparency a bit so I can start to see where do I actually need to trim these things. I need to trim around where walls hit it, where this planter hits the ground, where this planter hits the ground, where our system hits the ground, right? In fact, sort of the edge of that slab, sort of in between inside and outside, right? So, in this case, I'll probably just use the polygonal lasso tool and start to draw very precise hard edges where I just need to get rid of this stupid thing. Right around there. And make a shape like that and delete that stuff away. Yeah. And I'll do the same thing over here. So I'm just going to follow the edges. And just trim this stuff out. It wasn't too bad. I've seen worse. All right. That actually doesn't look too bad, just it's toned down to about 63% opacity, but I'm going to crank that up and let's take a look and see what we can do with some of these other layer types, layer blending types. So I have the layer selected, now I can come up here to normal, right? So I'm using it as a normal layer. I have the variety here. I can dissolve, darken, look like different, darken color. I can do light, to sort of darken things up, lighten things up, and do overlays. A variety there. All right, so, and what I tend to do is put my cursor over these and see what each one does. Usually it actually updates in real time, I thought, but maybe not. So I'll just keep switching these things out. So it's getting much too bright, and of course when you do difference, it does the exact opposite, it gets dark. Set hue, saturation, that's going to deal with color. So let's go with darken. Darken and multiply. So you can see when I do darken and multiply, I'm still getting the line work, the tone, and everything else, the nuances on the stuff underneath. But it basically does, it goes a little beyond just sort of turning the opacity down, right? It sort of merges the two together in a nice way. So I'm going to use, in this case, multiply, since I'm using a very bright palette here. Now, let's go ahead, let's bring that tree back, let's bring our happy humans back. There she is. And I'm just going to keep that overlay layer selected. Let's try our burn now and see if that works. Yeah, see it's starting to work a little better there. And if I was a little more careful here, I could take this down a notch or two. Right, and just sort of, again, just give it a little nuance underneath her, right? Just a little bit of tone, a little bit of soft shadow, just like the rest of the scene. I can do that the same way through everything else. So I can do that for things like concrete, travertine, stone. What's the polished stuff? You just sort of polish the aggregate or the cream away and leave the aggregate. Terrazzo, you know, any kind of tile, right? Any kind of flooring, of course. You can do that for walls, give things grit, give things texture. I'm very unsatisfied oftentimes with certain shaders when it comes to woods and things like that. Let me add maybe and what I'm thinking of is this soffit right here underneath, right? That sort of ceiling. What if we, a la sort of Snowhetta in Calgary Public Library or something, like made that a really nice sort of striated wood or something? Yeah, why not, right? Yeah, I mean, we can do better than just white clay plaster-ish materials, right? Okay, and this will give us practice copy and pasting, you know, making things look a little seamless, putting them in, matching the perspective, trimming things out the way we need to, using overlay layers to sort of blend it in with the existing tone and shadows and things like that, right? So that's the whole point, is just get some practice. When in doubt, I'll get rid of all the visual clutter here. I'll leave her up because she's not in the way, but that tree is in the way. What I want to do is I want to make some sort of texture, yeah. I just happen to have a couple here, right? That actually just looks like stained pine, which I'm not so fond of. But if we change the coloration, we can make it look like it's, you know, something much nicer, maybe a beech or an ash. And we can, you know, cover it with Danish oil or something. So this, you know, less than nice thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open that up in Photoshop as well. I think all I did was like, you know, Google like wood cladding or wood boards or something, high res. You know, I just find these things online when I need them. Let's see. There's Camera Raw again. Thanks, Camera Raw. Select all, copy, now Command New. Now it says height 2000. I'm going to stack these up so it's like a height of, well, let's see. Height of 4,000 and a width of 9,024 or something like that. 8 times 3 is 24, right? So 9024. It is way too early in Monday morning to be calculating too much of this, but double that, triple the other, and hit OK. Paste. And I should be able to paste 6 of these in here. Paste. 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 They don't do too bad this direction. Not perfect, but not too bad. This direction, of course, we have a seam. I might regret that. Let's see here. Yeah, I think I'll just get rid of that half. Yeah, so I'm just making this longer, this sort of giving me more striations back in the perspective. You know what? I'm not even gonna bother deleting layers. I'll just merge them all together and select all, copy. Let's put these into our handy dandy perspective. All right, now this looks colossally weird, right? I mean, I get it. I'm gonna go ahead and hit Command T and scale this down, right? Quite a bit, so it fits onto our canvas here. I'm gonna leave it as a rectangle. All right, so I could do perspective, but I actually like skew. I'm gonna use skew. It gives me a little more control. Perspective is kind of like swatting a fly with a sledgehammer, or a big framing hammer or something. Edge, let's see, edit, not edge, edit, skew. All right, here we go. So now I can start to drag things around. Oh, come on, right? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know why it's, why? All right, that's all right. Here I said I had lots of control, and now I don't have any control. So this should still go out. This should be able to go up. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, come on, why did it go up? Don't do that, no. Okay, there we go. Let's try something like that, see if it looks all right or not. Again, I'm just gonna turn this opacity down so I can sort of see how things get trimmed out here. In this case, I could use the magnetic lasso tool. Let's try that. And let's turn on this layer. Let's see how well it can, okay, it's not working well at all. Let me turn that off. All right. Let's see here. I'm actually really tempted to just try this. Let's try the object selection tool. Okay, no, it's not going to work. So let's try this quick selection tool. Yeah, that one's kind of like magic, right? And then if I need to, I can go back in and just deselect a few things if the net result is something handy here. Okay, it's not. Damn. I mean, crud. Phooey fiddlesticks, fudge buckets. Maybe I just need to zoom in and be more patient. All right, here we go. Here's the edge. Oh, come on. Oh, come. Yeah, I could. Okay, yeah, I will. All right, sometimes I just cheat it, right? Like, Mwahaha. So yeah. Of course, it gets worse when you actually get the good curve here. Yeah. This is the one I'm using. I'm just using the polygonal lasso tool, unfortunately. But let's talk about this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to hope I don't accidentally deselect it and have to re-select it all again, right? So we'll talk about saving selections. Have you guys done that? You guys know how to save selections? No? Okay. That comes in really handy, particularly when you're doing this stuff over and over again. All right, so we'll go over saving selections. You want to turn your cursor to pan, just hold down the space bar. Almost there. Almost there. Close enough. All right. So one of the things you can do really quickly when you have something selected and you're like, oh, I need to go back and select that. It's like, oh, I have to go around it again. You can save your selection. In fact, it's if you go down to paths, right next to layers, you can say make work path from selection. Right? Now you've saved that path. And now you can say load path as a selection anytime you want to go back to it. So I'm just going to unselect that. I'll go back to layers, make sure nothing's really selected here. If I need to reselect that at any point in time, I can go back and just load that as a selection. Okay? You can begin to save them there. It's really handy. You can also invert them from then on or whatever, right? And that's what we're going to do here. So if I go to layers, no, I don't want to watch a quick video. What? All right. Like, this isn't movie time, Photoshop. Come on. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this woods layer, right? Make sure that's the active layer. I have my shape selected. I actually want to keep everything inside that shape. It's everything outside that shape I want to delete, right? So I'm going to invert my selection again, select invert or Command-Shift-I, and then hit delete, right? It's incredible. Never get any better than that. It's unbelievable. All right, so, or something. And to me, it looks like, first of all, I turn up the opacity. There we go. And probably go with multiply again. And the other thing I can do, let's take a look at one of those adjustment layers, right? So I can always go back up here and say, well, you know, it's a little too orangey. I just want to sort of tone down the saturation, right? The amount of color in it, right? So I can go to hue saturation here, and I can turn down its saturation or give it a little warmer, a little darker, you know, depending on what I want to do. Make it a little more neutral, maybe even darken it up a bit, whatever. If I wanted to do that and not have to undo that later on or something like that, what I can do is I can take this layer, I can go to adjustments over here, adjustments preset, I can find the hue saturation adjustment layer. Right now it's going to try to adjust every layer that's below, right? If I hold down, I think it's my option key, it might be the alt key on a PC. You see how my cursor changes when I go to the the edge between this adjustment layer and that wood layer. I can click it, now it's just applying to just that wood layer, which is not handy. And from there I can go here and I can adjust these things anytime I want. So I can turn down this saturation, maybe darken it up a bit, give it a little more red, warm it up, something like that, right? And later on, when I open up that PSD, it's still right there. I can change it right back or mess around with it more. So again, it's like sort of having those number sliders in Grasshopper, but in Photoshop, right? Where you can begin to adjust things later on. Now, did I really match the perspective that well? I mean, that's up to you to sort of figure out. Because what I'm guessing is that these are somehow orthogonal to my camera view, whereas all of these walls change their angles throughout. So that'd be kind of a weird thing to actually try to figure out, honestly, trying to skin that sheet out with wood. Even if it was just slats, you know, and you have to keep the diffusers up above so that you can conceal the lights and the air handling. It still would be, it's pretty jagged sort of craziness to try to negotiate there, but it is what it is. All right, so now if I did it here, I'd have to do it up here and then up here as well, right? Yeah. In fact, I think, you know, a la sort of a cooking show, what is it doing? Let me just documents, teaching. The example I showed the other day probably had that. Let me just double check. Let's see. Yeah, so I put those all in. So there was people, you see shadows, you see people shadows, you see tree shadow. With that tree shadow, you know, what's interesting about it, let's see, it must be up here somewhere. There it is. There's the tree. Its shadow, right? You have to project part of the shadow down here, then think about it going that way and then coming back out the other end, right? So that's how shadows work, right? They sort of fall up and down surfaces as you go. And it would try to match up that angle, same as this angle, same as that angle, same as that angle, right? Yeah, so as best as possible. Those soffits are somewhere, probably back behind the trees. There they are. There's one. No, that's a tree. There's one. And there's one. And, well, there's another one. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm usually layering things up in Photoshop. I don't really care if things are like photorealistic. I'm more interested, especially in school, like, does the representation actually represent an idea? I think you can do that oftentimes better if you're not trying to strive for photorealism, but trying to sort of show what's important here. That tree is always bugs me. I don't like it. It's haloed. It looks kind of like obviously photoshopped in. But that said, I mean, you know, if it really bugged me that much, I can just turn down the transparency, right? See more of the architecture behind it. You know, again, you can play these games with collage. Right? I'll try to find some examples, some good examples for Wednesday, right? Our colleagues in landscape architecture usually get really good at this, right? Like sort of making these elaborate collages. We could do better, I think. So I'll try to find some good examples for you guys to look at. But play around, right? If you need to get caught up between now and Wednesday. If not, play around a little bit, right? Come with good questions if you can. Yeah.
For this one, do we need to do something like 3 of them, or like?
Yeah, you're gonna do this to 3. You have 3 perspectives you did.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're gonna have 3 collages. So, and that's the interesting thing here, right? Like I do this one, and then for the second one, am I gonna pick the exact same people again? You better not. Come on, don't do that, right? Like it's always like, it's the first thing that stands out. Everybody's like, oh gosh. And then they'll get the third one, there they are again, right? Like, what's that guy thinking? Why is he in all these shots? Why is he photobombing us? Where is she going so fast over on the left, or the right-hand side, right? So that's the key thing, right? Like, take it seriously. Try to make 3 good perspectives that you would actually put in your portfolio. Okay. Right? In fact, oftentimes I see these in the portfolios. These and then the Project 2 laser cut things. Yeah, so it's September 25th. Remember, I said there's some wiggle room in that calendar, right? So, you know, if we needed to go into October to sort of finish these things up, we can. What I'd like to do is this week do some Photoshop and have you guys start collaging some things up and submitting them. Then you actually have a little bit of feedback to clean them up, while we also do a quick section perspective rendering with this model, right? So we can start to think in terms of diagramming a little more with these things too. And compose some sort of poster with all those outputs, okay? That's my goal. It might take us an extra week to get there. But like I said, we have wiggle room in that schedule. And then project 2, we'll be doing digital fabrication. So we can sort of tie in geometry with performance and then also with manufacturability. So you'll actually be fabricating, laser cutting, assembling your grid shells twice. First time, you sort of figure out how not to do it. Second time, you learn a lot and they do something with this. Then we'll be doing that with through the lens of measuring performance with shading. So we'll be using parametric modeling to reconcile geometry, performance, shading, fabrication, assembly. We'll make some assembly diagrams, a la like if you bought this thing from the museum store as a kit, like a flat packed kit or something, like how to put it together, all the notches and things like that. Almost like you buying a piece of furniture at IKEA or something, right? Or buying a Lego set, right? Instructions. All right, so that's where we're going. And we're almost done with dresses. We'll do some more Photoshop work this week and over the weekend. And then we'll do, I think, one more rendering, and we'll talk about cooking planes and zeroing in on getting a slice, section perspective. Awesome, great, fantastic. I will see you guys Wednesday.